You think you know Henry VIII, the guy with 6 wives who started the Church of England? Well, get ready, because the real Henry VIII was way worse than any history book tells you. A king so incredibly fat that he needed machines just to move around. A man whose rotting leg wounds smelled so bad that servants would run away throwing up. A ruler whose own body was falling apart so badly that his coffin exploded from the stinky gases of his dead body. Let me know in the comments where you're watching this video from, and don't forget to like and subscribe. You're about to learn the shocking secrets about Henry VIII that make Game of Thrones look like a kid's bedtime story. From his weird eating habits to his crazy security rules. From how he treated his wives that was way worse than just killing them, to the disgusting truth about his last years. These are the facts that will change everything you thought you knew about England's most famous king. His body was a walking mess. Let's start with the most shocking truth about Henry VIII. By the end of his life, he was basically a walking dead person. We're talking about a man whose body had become so gross that even his own servants were scared. Henry's belly measured 54 inches around. To help you understand, that's bigger than most people are tall. He weighed around 400 pounds back when normal men weighed maybe 140 pounds, but here's the really horrible part. It wasn't just that he was fat. His legs were covered in big, open wounds that never got better. These weren't small cuts. We're talking about huge sores that leaked pus and rotting skin all the time. The smell was so terrible that people at court would hold sweet-smelling cloths over their faces when they got near the king. Some old stories say you could smell the stench from several rooms away. Servants actually picked straws to see who had to help dress him because getting close to those wounds was like being punished. But wait, it gets worse. Smart doctors today think Henry had a really bad brain injury from falling off his horse while jousting in 1536. This wasn't just bumping his head, he was knocked out for 2 hours, which back then meant he was almost dead. The injury probably caused big changes in his personality, which explains how he changed from a pretty normal young king into the angry, scared monster of his later years. You don't learn this in history class, but Henry probably also had something called Cushing syndrome, which would explain why he gained so much weight, had crazy mood swings, and had those horrible leg sores that wouldn't heal. His own doctors were so scared of him that they wouldn't dare tell him he might be really sick. Saying bad things about the king's health was considered betraying the country. The man who said God gave him the right to rule couldn't even control when he had to go to the bathroom in his last years. Royal helpers had to carry special chairs everywhere he went because Henry could barely make it from room to room without having an accident. This is the same guy who killed people for looking at him wrong. The wives had it even worse than you think. Everyone knows Henry VIII had 6 wives and killed 2 of them. But what those women really went through was way worse than just getting their heads cut off. We're talking about mind games that would make modern crazy killers jealous. Take in Boleyn. Before killing her, Henry didn't just decide to kill her. He set up an elaborate lie that included forcing her own music player to admit under torture that he had slept with her. But here's the really sick part. Henry made Anne watch as 5 men, including her own brother, were killed for supposedly sleeping with her. She had to stand there knowing she was next, watching innocent people die because of her husband's crazy made-up stories. Catherine Howard got it even worse. She was basically a teenager when Henry married her, and when he found out about her past boyfriends, he didn't just kill her, he made a new law making it a crime for anyone to marry the king without telling him about everyone they'd ever been with. Imagine being so petty that you changed all the laws because your teenage wife wasn't pure. But the mind games were the worst part. Henry would give his wives gifts and love one day, then completely ignore them or threaten them the next. Catherine of Aragon spent her last years basically locked up, not allowed to see her daughter Mary, while Henry spread lies that she was crazy. She died alone, maybe poisoned, writing letters to Henry that he never bothered to read. Here's something that will blow your mind. Henry actually made his wives sign papers agreeing to their own divorces. Anne of Cleves was so scared of him that she agreed to pretend their marriage never happened just to avoid being killed. She basically had to act like their marriage was fake and thank him for not murdering her and Jane Seymour, the lucky one who died naturally. She died from problems after giving birth to Henry's son, and Henry was already looking at his next wife before Jane's body was even cold. He waited exactly 9 days after her funeral to start planning his next marriage. The man treated people like things you throw away when you're done with them. And the worst part is that these women had no way out. Divorce wasn't allowed. Running away meant death. And fighting back meant not just your own death but maybe your whole family's death too. His eating habits were completely crazy. If you think eating contests are wild today, wait until you hear about Henry VIII's daily food eating. This man didn't just eat like a king, he ate like he was trying to cause a shortage of food all by himself. Henry ate about 5,000 calories every day. For comparison, that's more than twice what a grown man who exercises should eat. And remember, this guy could barely walk by the end of his life. But how much he ate wasn't even the weirdest part. It was what he ate and how he ate it. A normal meal for Henry included a whole roasted pig, multiple whole chickens, several types of fish, mountains of bread, and enough wine to fill a small boat. His kitchen workers made over 800 different dishes every single day just for his house, with Henry trying dozens of them himself. The royal kitchens had over 200 people working day and night to keep up with his hunger. But here's where it gets really weird. Henry was sure that certain foods had magical powers. He thought eating swan would make him more graceful, eating lots of deer would make him a better hunter, and that oysters would make him better with his wives. So he'd stuff himself with these specific foods in huge amounts, like some kind of old-timey superfood obsession. The man also had the strangest eating rules. Every single piece of food that went into Henry's mouth was first tasted by multiple servants to check for poison. But get this, he was so worried that he made his food tasters wait 30 minutes after eating before he'd touch anything, just to make sure they didn't die from slow-acting poison. Henry's meals were basically shows. He'd eat in front of hundreds of court people, and the whole thing could take up to 4 hours. Imagine sitting there watching this huge, rotting king slowly eat enough food to feed a small town, all while pretending this was perfectly normal royal behavior. You don't learn this in history class. But Henry actually banned certain foods from his court, not because they were unhealthy, but because he thought they were too common for him. Poor people's food like turnips and barley were literally against the law at his table, even though they probably would have been better for his health than the mountains of meat and sugar he ate every day. The really crazy part, even as his body was literally falling apart from his diet, Henry kept eating more and more. Convinced that being royal somehow made him safe from what his eating was doing to him, the paranoia that ruled an empire. Henry VIII's paranoia wasn't just your typical don't trust anyone attitude. This man turned his whole kingdom into a spy state that would make modern dictators jealous. By his last years, Henry was so sure that everyone was planning to kill him that he made royal life a living nightmare for everyone around him. Let's start with how he slept. Henry slept with loaded crossbows next to his bed and kept multiple knives under his pillow. But that wasn't enough. He also had armed guards inside his bedroom watching him sleep all night. Imagine being so scared of being killed that you couldn't even close your eyes without people watching. The palace itself became a fortress of fear. Henry ordered workers to build secret hallways throughout every building he lived in, not for romance or convenience, but so he could escape if killers came for him. He had spy holes put in walls, so he could watch his own court people, and listening devices hidden in meeting rooms to hear private conversations. But here's where it gets really crazy. Henry created a whole network of spies whose job was to spy on his other spies. He had informants watching his informants, creating this twisted web of spying where nobody knew who they could trust. Court life became a scary horror show where saying the wrong thing to the wrong person could literally get you killed. Henry's food paranoia reached completely ridiculous levels. Not only did he have multiple food tasters, but he required his meals to be made in completely locked kitchens with guards watching every step of the cooking. The salt, the spices, even the water had to be tested by different people. He was so sure someone would poison him that eating a simple meal became like a war operation. The man even thought his own children were planning against him. He had spies watching Princess Mary and Princess Elizabeth, his own daughters, because he was convinced they were planning to take over from him. These were kids, and he treated them like enemy spies in their own home. Henry's paranoia got so extreme that he started killing people for crimes they hadn't even done yet. He'd have someone killed because he dreamed they betrayed him, or because someone else suggested they might be disloyal in the future. The Tower of London was always full of people whose only crime was being near Henry, while he was in one of his paranoid moods. The really scary part is that Henry's paranoia was so catching that it infected his whole court. Nobles started spying on each other, servants betrayed their masters for fake rewards, and everyone lived in constant fear that they'd be the next victim of the king's crazy suspicions. Death couldn't even stop the chaos. You'd think Henry VIII's reign of terror would end when he died, right? Wrong. This man was so committed to being a disaster that even his dead body managed to cause complete mayhem. Let's start with his last weeks. Henry was so huge that he couldn't walk, so his servants had to carry him everywhere using a specially made chair with pulleys and wheels. But here's the disgusting part. His leg wounds had become so infected that pieces of rotting flesh would literally fall off his body as they moved him. Servants had to follow behind him with cloths to clean up the chunks of decomposing king that dropped on the palace floors. His death scene was like something out of a horror movie. Henry's body had swollen to such gross size that his skin was stretched tight and shiny. The smell was so terrible that even his doctors, who were used to old-timey medical horrors, had to leave the room to throw up. When he finally died, nobody wanted to get close enough to officially say he was dead. But wait, it gets so much worse. Henry's body was so bloated with gases from rotting inside that his coffin had to be specially strengthened. They wrapped his dead body in lead sheets and sealed it in multiple wooden boxes, thinking that would contain the mess. They were very, very wrong. During the funeral parade from London to Windsor Castle, something absolutely incredible happened. The coffin literally exploded. The gases from Henry's rotting body built up so much pressure that the lead lining burst open and rotting royal remains splattered all over the inside of the funeral cart. The smell was so horrible that the funeral parade had to stop while servants cleaned up the mess with buckets and rags. Here's a detail that will give you nightmares. Dogs were reportedly seen licking up the remains of Henry VIII that had leaked from his coffin onto the road. The man who claimed to rule by God's will ended up as dog food on a country highway. Even his burial became a disaster. They had to dig his grave extra wide to fit the massive coffin. But the ground kept falling in because the soil couldn't support the weight of all that lead and rotting flesh. It took multiple tries just to get the king's remains into the ground and keep them there. The chaos didn't end there. For years afterward, people reported strange noises and terrible smells coming from Henry's tomb. Some said it was his ghost, but historians think it was probably just more gases escaping from his continuously rotting remains. You don't learn this in history class. But Henry's death was so traumatic for everyone involved that several of the servants who handled his body died within weeks, possibly from infections they caught from touching his rotting corpse. So there you have it. The real Henry VIII. Not the charming king of popular movies, but a walking disaster whose own body betrayed him as badly as he betrayed everyone around him. A man so consumed by fear and overeating that he turned one of Europe's most powerful kingdoms into his personal horror show. The most powerful man in England became a prisoner of his own rotting body. And even death couldn't end his ability to cause complete chaos. His legacy isn't just the Church of England or his 6 wives. It's a perfect example of how total power can turn a human being into something truly monstrous. If these disturbing royal facts made you question everything you thought you knew about history, maybe hit that subscribe button, because there are plenty more horrifying truths that textbooks leave out on purpose. And trust me, you haven't heard anything yet.